You have to be able to do this, because just to do it within a few lines of code, we've given programmers 25 lines of code, and we say within this 25 lines of code, there is an exploitable construct. We'd like you to find it and fix it. We found out that most can't find it. So without tools to enable this, we're not trying to replace good practices, but you have to have tools to support what you're doing. And you want to be able to define the metrics and goals associated with it. So if you look at your normal life cycle, everybody does plan, designing, build, and deploying. I'm not going to say which was the proper way of reflecting that. But everybody today, I know you do some requirements analysis and your use cases. That's the best way of getting started with it. Architecture and detailed design, your coding and testing, and you support your fielded programs. But if you really want to make more resilient software products, you want to kind of enhance what you're doing. In addition to your use cases, you need to factor in abuse cases. And that's where what we've introduced, the common attack patterns, is it relates to the common weaknesses. We want to make sure that you bounce these common attack patterns against whatever you're developing. Your security requirements might be explicit, but don't assume that your customer is going to be explicit about defining that all the time. Introducing risk analysis early on. Your design review needs to also be risk-based, and your test plans to be there. Code review still is one of the most important things that we do. It's a practice that we've known, and that means a peer review. No single individual should be submitting something to a library without somebody else looking at it. Static analysis, specifically static code analysis using tools, should be introduced not just by your testers, but your developers have to have these tools as well. You might decide to use different tools, but if developers don't have it, you're basically going to come all the way out to the end here, discover these exploitable weaknesses in code and say, you did it wrong, go back and start over, and everybody says, see, that's why security costs a lot. Well, don't wait till the end. And then you want to start doing penetration testing, not just after you've deployed it and that application, but during development as well. And in security operations and vulnerability management, if you've deployed more than 3 patches and not gone back and looked at your design and architect, you've probably got a problem there. So your vulnerability management needs to be re-looking at your architecture as well. So in order to build security in throughout the life cycle and help organizations get started, we're saying modify your existing software development life cycle to incorporate security processes and tools to be done in all phases. Allow time to change for culture and processes. Just because you've got a great tool, if your practitioners didn't decide that this is how they want to use it, it's not going to fit within their workflow, and it's not going to be used. Avoid any drastic changes and balance the benefits to determine the best integration points. And that's when Stan, to be able to talk about, if you want to take advantage of a document that's being published literally this week. It's out now, and enhancing the development lifecycle to produce secure software. Stan?
Thanks, Joe. I just want to highlight a couple of the different work products we're working on, and following through what he was just talking about as far as integrating in security into the SDLC. You know, the big question is how. You know, it's great to preach that, but how do you actually do it? And what we're trying to do with this effort, this work product we produced, it's called the Enhancing the Development Lifecycle to Produce Secure Software. It's not to spin it one particular way or the other. You know, there are different ways. You've seen the Microsoft SDL. You have the touch points from Gary McGraw. There are different ways that have been proposed, but objectively provide some information about how you can enhance the lifecycle. Now, the Processes Working Group has been working on this for like 3+ years, and it's gone through multiple iterations. I want to draw a similarity to how Owasp does their projects. Just like Owasp, it's primarily a volunteer activity as far as participating in these working groups. And we have folks dropping in each year, each meeting. You never know who's going to be there, who's going to participate. You don't know who's going to be providing comments, but we, basically over the course of the 3-year period, we've had industry, academia, government, vendors, all hacking at this and trying to improve it. This latest round of comments, since it's going to be published through the DAX, the Data Analysis Center for Software, it was an invited review period, and it's going to be made available for free in PDF as well as a wiki form on the DAX site. And so likewise, similar to Owasp, we're trying to make this freely available. The idea as far as the document itself is, again, not to spin it one way or the other, but provide a whole bunch of different material for you to be able to pick and choose what's most appropriate for your life cycle and how to integrate it in. To give you the high-level view of what's in the document, no real surprises here, and I sort of draw some conclusions from the description from Jeff on the application security desktop reference, that there are a lot of similarities. The fact that we want to help people understand how to do the upfront integration, the coding phase. You know, if you look at what we're doing with the secure coding principles and practices, some general principles and practices have been captured, but also gets into the specific coding languages and some recommendations there. The white box, gray box, and black box testing techniques that you can apply. And so one of the things that the primary author, Karen Gertzel, has done is done a great job of canvassing what's available out there. And if nothing else, I think this can be used as a great reference, similar to what they're trying to do with the application security desktop reference, and leverage the bibliography, because there's a lot of great sources that she's pulled together to create this. Now, we've heard this from both Joe and Jeff this morning, that while you can create a lot of guidance, one of the big challenges is that we're still unable to necessarily understand what it is that we're acquiring. We need to be better informed, but many times what we're acquiring is a black box. You don't understand what they've done in their development life cycle. Have they embraced this mantra of build security in? Have they built in security into their life cycle? Well, many times you don't know. Do they do any kind of testing as far as in their life cycle for security? Now, how are they as far as tracking the vulnerabilities after the fact? When they sell you the product and they do have some kind of exploit that's been advertised, are they making any kind of commitment, or do they have a process for handling vulnerabilities and get you a timely fix in some form? And many times what we're finding when the acquisition side of the equation is that they aren't asking these questions. And so you have this supply chain and all these different software components being ultimately fed up to create some kind of system or an application. And it can be very complex, as Joe went into. But what we're proposing is that the stakeholders involved with the acquisition of the system and the application, they have a responsibility to be aware, be better informed, and to ask the questions. Okay, well, again, how? Many times they don't know what questions to ask. That's not their specialty. They're contract officers. Again, it's not something they've focused on. And so you got to feed them that information. And so one of the things that we've worked on, again, it's been like a 3-year effort now, is an acquisition working group. I co-chair this with Mary Politis from National Defense University. Again, we've had lots of different participants over the last 3 years, and we're focused on, Joe asked us to focus on the acquisition life cycle as opposed to the SDLC, which the previous document I was talking about was focused on. And so, it's a somewhat of again, a bit of a different life cycle than the SDLC. The SDLC is part of that as far as producing the software. But we're, again, focused not just on government acquisition, but it can be leveraged by private sector as well. And so in this effort of 3 years of trying to come up with some kind of document, and it's not going to be a regulation. We're not producing out of this Software Assurance Initiative regulations. We're trying to provide information to help better inform people, whether it be building software or acquiring software. And the challenge has been to walk that line of, well, we don't want to make it too government focused. We don't want to make it too, so